Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to Speaking of Gas. Thanks for tuning in this morning. This is a weekly look at what matters to you, the owner of oil and gas rights in Pennsylvania, and it's brought to you by the GasWellGuru, educating and advocating for the landowner. This is recorded and will be available on my YouTube channel. I apologize for the little glare in the glasses. I'm in a different location, broadcasting from Chandler, Arizona, and sun's just coming up out here, a little warmer than it is out in Pennsylvania. So this morning we're going to talk about the top 25 wells because the production report came out on the 15th of January for November. That'll be the bulk of the discussion. And then I'll also give an update on some new activity popping up in Dimick. So first we'll go to the production report and take a look at the top 20 wells here for November. And at the top of the list, I'll make this a little bigger so maybe you can see it better. At the very top of the list, we have the two Shumhurst wells, the 24 HC and 25 HC, and I'm going to talk more in depth about those two wells in a moment. And as you go down through the list, now those wells produce 42 and 41 million cubic feet a day in 22 days. Note that they just began production. That is the first month for both of those wells. And then on down, we've got a Sullivan County well, the Joe Goosewa well, and that's in at 39 million. A Leroy Township well in Bradford County, 39 million. And that one is a state game lands well, the North Unit. And we've got Wyoming County, Bradford, and then we've got this is the state ranking on the side, number 9 through 15 are Greene County wells, and we've seen these ones a number of times. They've been in production. If you look at the spud dates at the side, those were spud in 2022, so they've been in production a good part of a year. The barley wine, pale ale, number of wells on those two pads. And then as we go down, we're back in Bradford and Susquehanna County, Greene, Susquehanna, Bradford. You know, the list in past months have been kind of dominated by the southwestern part of the state, and now the Northeast is back up at the top. Those two major producing areas here in Pennsylvania. So I think there's probably not a lot else to pick out on that. All the major operators we see: Chesapeake, EQT, Coterra, and I guess that's it for the very top wells. I will note that when I pulled this report off a couple days ago, right after it came out, it was short about 2,000 wells, and you really don't have any way of knowing without extensive search what wells are missing. I did check it again yesterday. I've mentioned this before, that they're required to report, but there's not really any teeth in that. They will usually report all the wells, but if they're short some of the wells on the initial report, they'll be added later. And when you look at that final date, it will show. Now, these ones were all, it looks like, reported on time, but there are another, as of yesterday, there's at least 1,000 wells that weren't reported. So it's possible it could change. It had not in the 3 days. So, okay, so now we're going to look at those top 2 wells. And forgive me this taking a little bit of time. I think I have a lesson to learn about labeling my documents here because sometimes it's hard to locate them by just the permit numbers. So, location plat. And I'm pretty sure they're all up here. Okay. There it is. Okay, so the second well, and the first and second well in ranking are pretty close. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to find the right report. Number 25 is actually 25HC is actually the second well as far as ranking. And this is a location well from that plat, or plat from that well. And this shows the location of the pad and the trajectory of the well bore. Very clear. This is a Chesapeake well. It's a very clear plat. You can easily identify where your property is and how this lateral will affect it. Let me pull up the state map and show you actually where we are on this. And that would be here. This is Tuscarora Township in Bradford County. It's in that southeast corner of Bradford County where it butts up against Susquehanna and Wyoming and Sullivan County. So as we zoom in on all these wells, and of course, if you've seen this before, you know that there are a lot of wells in that area. And this right here is the Shumhurst pad. And there are 3 wells on the Shumhurst pad. The first one you see here is a 3H, and that was spud back in 2019, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And the reason I wanted to look at these wells is it's interesting to look at a well that was drilled 4 years ago and how the technology and the procedures they're using are changing over time. And so then we have the 25HC and the 24HC. And all 3 of those are producing on this pad. And of course, if you zoom in, you can actually see the 3 wells on that pad. Okay. So going back to the Shumway, excuse, I keep wanting to say Shumhurst. Shumhurst pad. Okay. Location plat. And this shows that it's in the Marcellus Shale, and that's down just below 7,000 feet. This shows the length of the lateral. And on the 25HC, the lateral length was 10,796 feet. And on the 24H, it was 11,735, 1,000 feet longer. Both of those wells are very close in the specs on it and how they were completed. At least all the completion reports are not available yet on the 24HC. So I have those just for the one. Okay, so let's go back to, let's see, somebody wants to get on the call that I guess I have to let you in if you're on the phone. So whoever it is, I've just admitted you to the room. So now we're going to take a look at the completion report for the Shumhurst 25. And got my numbers right here. Okay, this is the completion report for the 25HC. It's the original, and what I'm finding on these is they're submitting the originals and then amended reports because this is not quite complete. Now, the print is very small on this one. Rather than use their form, they used an attachment, but we can zoom in on this. Not that we're going to read all the details. The important part here is this shows the perforation stages for the frac. And it's showing what the interesting thing is, there's 61 stages that they perforated for this well. So they block off, they go to the end of the well bore, they perforate, they block it off, they back up, perforate another one, etc. And then they're going to go in and stimulate or frac each of these stages individually. And when we take a look at that 3HC that was drilled back in 2019, the difference in the number of stages is what is really dramatic. This is a 10,000 foot lateral. That one is a 5,277 foot lateral. It's half the distance, but they used 3 times the frac for this. So they're actually breaking up that rock much more than they had in the past with this particular, these particular wells. And we're seeing twice the production on it at this point, at this initial point. Okay. So now, so that was the completion report. So now let's take a look at that 3H well. It's amazing what kind of difference 3-4 years can make in the technology that they're using. So this is the location plat for that well. And the lateral, like I said, is 5,277 feet. Again, they are doing these location plats a little different, but it's, again, very clear where your property lies as far as that lateral is concerned. And then this shows the side view of it, shows how they're starting out, drilling down straight, and then they're going back. These wells go to the south, so they're drilling north and then curving around, and the landing point is almost directly under the vertical well bore. So, you know, these used to come straight down once upon a time, and they actually would be stranding gas within here. But now they're going to frack typically from the toe of the lateral at the end back to this landing point or close to, so that they're developing all the gas underneath that and out along the well bore. So now if we take a look at, if you remember, we were on that production report that the Shumway 24 and 25 were producing, oh, and I have to refresh here. On the production report, okay, there it is. They were number 1 and number 2, producing 42 and 41 million cubic feet a day. The 3H is still in production. It is not producing right now, and I suspect that's because of drilling the new wells. They typically do shut down the currently producing well to reduce any risk of, I guess, explosions or interference, whatever. But that well is currently ranking 9,390 in the production report. So that one has declined dramatically, and I'll actually show you the production report from that well so you can see how that occurred. As a royalty owner, that's something, understanding how the wells decline, how your well is declining, how new wells might in the future. To me, that's important. You know that the only royalty you can count on is the check that's in your hands today, in the bank and cleared, because production can stop at any time. It can, and it will diminish over time. So as a royalty owner, it's important that you have some understanding of that to be able to manage your mineral interest. So now, let's see, we looked at the location plat, and now we're going to look at the production report from that well. So this is a well going back to, it was actually spud in May of 2019, I believe. I didn't keep all these columns in here. It began producing in May of 2019. It may have actually been spud in 2018 because it is listed as active but temporarily not producing during those months. So I also did the 1,000,000 cubic feet per day on that well, and you can see that it produced 6 days in May, first time out, did 5.7 million cubic feet a day. But then on the second month production in June, it produced for 28 days, and that was at 27 million cubic feet. And so that was, you know, pretty respectable production. If it was a little less than half of the production that we're seeing, or a little more than half of the initial production on the 25 wells, but it was fracked again it was half the distance and fracked with a third of the stages. So then it drops off pretty dramatically in that first year. It did come in at 27 million, and then you see it steadily declining. And if you look at the following year in May, we're down to 6.8 million cubic feet. Now, as you know, you should know, what these numbers are depends on how the company produces it. You don't know what it's capable of, or if there's pipeline constraints, for example. But you are seeing a steady decline on it. And then when you get down here to February, March of 2023, says temporarily not producing. They did produce it just a small amount in May for some reason, but this, my guess would be, has to do with the drilling of the new wells that they permitted on that pad. Okay, let's see. And again, I do have the completion report up for that well. Let me share that. There we go. And here is the same report, a little easier to read. Biggest reason probably is that there's 19 stages instead of 61, but you are typically seeing that now, a lot shorter stages and more of them. And this shows the perforation information, and then there's actually the stimulation, perforation, and stimulation date, when the well was actually fracked, and then what the treatment was of each of those. You know, we find now, in the beginning, what I would see was that they would, way in the beginning, they would have consistent intervals on those frac stages. And I can remember seeing wells with, let's say, 12 stages, and then the same amount of sand and proppant. Now they are customizing the fracs to each stage of the well bore. So, it's amazing when you follow the science and how much they have gained in this since they began, and much improved the amount of gas that they're being able to bring out. Okay, I think that's all I've got there for those wells. Again, I thought it was interesting to take a look at a pad where they're drilling some new wells. This one in particular just had one existing well, and there may be more. There are no current additional permits on this one. There may be. Typically, full development of a pad might have a lot more wells on it, certainly, than the 3. So I am going to mention Dimock again. I talked about Dimock last week. It was in the news that the state allowed for drilling in that moratorium area. Now, I guess I should qualify that. Permission to drill under, but not have a well pad on inside that moratorium area. And so they got, and that would be Coterra, has gotten right to work siting wells that go under there. Now, last week I showed you some wells from a pad that were going the opposite direction, and I think not into the moratorium area. But then this week there was an area of review summary that popped up, and this was for the, okay, where'd we go? I don't know why I have so much trouble seeing all my documents I have up. This is where I need a production assistant. Okay, here we go. All right, this is the Pelco pad. And the area of review summary, again, is to show what other wells are drilled within an area and where the new wells are going to be. So if you look at the legend down here, these green wells are the subject wells, the ones they're proposing. The orange line around the outside is the buffer, the 1,000-foot buffer that they have to delineate. And then the gray lines are this company, in this case, Coterra's drilled wells. And then the light colored ones are competitor wells. So you can actually see it says Kerr, Chesapeake, Appalachia on these wells. Some interesting configurations there with all these prior wells that have been drilled. This bold dotted line, it says Dimock Carter Road / Carter Road. So, and I need to really check, but I think that this is probably the moratorium area delineated. And so they're showing that the pad is outside that and the laterals will extend underneath to develop. So that just kind of, we'll watch this as it goes forward. They have permission to drill from the outside, and with those new long laterals, that's a reality that they should be able to fully develop it that way. Okay, so that's all I have today from sunny Arizona. I think we're going to get up into the 70s today, and there's no snow. And I apologize for rubbing your nose in that. So thank you for joining me today. I will check the questions quickly to see if there are any. We haven't had too much action on the questions, but remember, anytime that you can submit them. I do have people that want additional information afterwards that email me. But thanks for joining me. This same link, if you're registered, will work each Thursday at 9 a.m. And all the webcasts, the prior ones, are now up on YouTube. And as soon as I get to it, I will put this one up. We'll have new topics each week and go back and update if we need to. And then one last thing, I always put the pitch in for POGLA, Pennsylvania Oil and Gas Landowner Alliance. We're the only organization representing your interest as an advocate and providing education. So take a look at pogla.org and consider joining. So thank you, and see you next week.